the history of more countries over here, which we've been speaking about 40, 45 different countries really here inside this series. Just recording this from the city of Ramadan, happens to be Zot Chanukah, the date of recording this, as it's another special edition, friends, another country. Yesterday, if you recollect, we did speak about Nigeria, the Jewish community, and now today we are going to be doing something very exciting, speaking about the country Mongolia. Okay, I don't think there was much written with regards to Mongolia before as a country itself, within regards to Judaism. But let's explain it a bit. Now, the history of the Jewish community in Mongolia dates to the 19th century, the 1800s, when there were Jewish merchants from Siberia would, let's say, establish trade links with Mongolian communities. I think there was a small Jewish population that would develop in the early 20th century. Primarily, this would be composed of Russian Jewish people fleeing the Russian Civil War. Now, I think it was in June 1921, about 104 years ago, the community of Olga, which is now known as Ulaanbaatar, I believe. Now, Ulaanbaatar, I think, is the capital and most populous city of Mongolia. It has a population of 1.67 million, if I'm not mistaken. This specific population, unfortunately, was massacred. Some of the pockets of them were under the orders of Russian warlord, some named Roman von Ungern Sternberg, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That was at that stage in time. Now, today, Mongolia's Jewish population numbers fewer than 100 individuals. There's no synagogue or no communal infrastructure. I think there's a Jewish interest group there. Mongolian Jewish Cooperation was formed in 2003 to promote awareness of Judaism and Israel among Mongolians. So for this 100 individuals, I'm not too sure how many percent, if all of them are halakhically Jewish or not. So let's explore it more. Now, before 1920, most Jews that arrived in Mongolia were of Russian background and had, let's say, fled the chaos of the Russian Civil War. I think it was in June 1921. Unfortunately, the community was massacred under orders from White Russian Roman von Ungern Sternberg, I think, who instructed his forces, unfortunately, to kill Jews, Bolsheviks, and Chinese soldiers. And the king's, let's say, the killings were carried out, reported over, by someone named Fyodor, and who was captain over there. And I think there was one survivor, someone named Israel Eli Alexander Zanza, had assimilated afterwards into Mongolian society and held a noble title, eventually fleeing to Poland. Unfortunately, he was murdered in the Holocaust. Now, I think it was despite the massacre, Jewish migration resumed a few years later, and most of the people will primarily go to Russia. I think come 1925, 1926, a Russian Jewish journalist came across a community of 50 newly settled families in a remote region of Outer Mongolia, approximately, say, 320 kilometers, 200 miles away from the Manchurian border. And in 1926, Ulaanbaatar had a population of 600 Russian Jews who attempted to leave Outer Mongolia, which was, I believe, at that point in time, a Soviet satellite state at that point in time. During World War II, Soviet authorities relocated thousands of Lithuanian Jews to Soviet Mongolia and Eastern Siberia. The Jewish community in Mongolia at that point in time is, let's say, faded during the communist era. Anyone tuning in live at the moment, welcome to our community, and please subscribe to the channel as we're exploring the history of the Jewish community of Mongolia over here on this special edition. So everyone, welcome and to our community, and we've got fantastic content here. If you browse through, we've spoken already about loads of different countries. We've concentrated on, explored the history within regards to a lot of different countries and educations in of itself respectively. So it's a very opportune time, and I'm actually recording this here at the moment. Anyone tuning in live here during the time period of the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. We happen to be on the day called Zot Chanukah today, which is an auspicious day. It's the final day of this beautiful Jewish festival, and anyone tuning in live, welcome, as we do a lot of tours around the country over here, and we speak about a lot of great rabbis of yesteryear here, and so much, so on and so forth. We speak about Jewish festivals, we tour around Israel, so please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join our community and enjoy the great content we're speaking about Mongolia today. And if you recollect yesterday, we speak about the country Nigeria also, so very, very interesting. So welcome to everyone listening. Now, post-Soviet Union, after the breakup of Soviet Union, a number of Jewish citizens left the country in search of better economic opportunities. Some left for Israel, which had, I think, visa agreements with Mongolia at that point in time. Let's talk about present day over here, and then we'll speak a bit more within regards to more of the history of Mongolia, which is very, very interesting. A lot can be digested, a lot can be put and related over within regards to this, and I really appreciate everyone watching at the moment. Okay, so Mongolia, let's speak about present day over here, because a lot can be said and related over within regards to, let's say, the modern period in of itself. So I think few Israeli tourists will visit Mongolia in summers, and the two countries have apparently a mutual agreement for visa exemptions. In 2003, the Mongol Jewish Corporation was formed, and its website answers questions about subjects such as Judaism and Israel. The organization's head is someone named Samutai Lusandadev. He had said there are enough fingers on two hands to count all Jews who live here. The closest Jewish community with a rabbi is the Siberian city of Irkutsk. I think that's in Oblast, Russia, if I'm not mistaken, whose chief rabbi is Rabbi Aaron Wagner, seeks to maintain close contact with the neighboring Mongolian Jewish community. I think there's an Israeli businessman, someone named Yair Jacob Porat, spearheaded, let's say, efforts to revive Jewish life in Mongolia. I think he settled in Ulaanbaatar in 1996 and has hosted holiday gatherings, distributed matzot on Pesach, and imported kosher food. I think in 2024, he commissioned the delivery of a Torah scroll, the first in living memory to reach the country. This was Porat's home. Mr. Porat's home functions as a de facto synagogue, although I think there's no regular minyan over there. Minyan is a quorum of 10 men. Mr. Porat has also worked to uncover, preserve the memory of the 1921 massacre through archival research and local interviews. He's identified what is believed to be a mass grave site with a Russian Orthodox cemetery, Ulaanbaatar. Among the Jewish gravestones found are a 1937 stone with a Star of David and a monument indicating a mass burial of 15 men. Now, anyone tuning in live at the moment, we are exploring the history, Jewish community history of Mongolia here on this special edition. So anyone here, welcome to our community. We are trying to explore all the different countries of the world, interesting countries within regards to Jewish community, Judaism, and the heritage that actually comes from Judaism in of itself. So I think it's a very important time. We're on Zot Chanukah at the moment. And yeah, please don't forget to also subscribe to the channel also and join. And we've got so much fantastic content for all you fantastic people out there. I really appreciate all the great feedback all you guys are giving, and really appreciate all viewers of all Torah content that we're doing over here. We really, really appreciate it. And Chanukah Sameach to everyone in advance. Over here, we are exploring the community history of the country Mongolia here on this special edition. And a lot of content can be said over within regards to that. So we're going to talk about Israeli relations more, about Mongolia and what were the other communities like over there. Not much is actually found on online within regards to this country. It's very, very, let's just say, not so much in of itself. So we spoke about the Ungern-Sternberg massacre of 1921. We spoke about how there were Jewish merchants from Siberia established trade routes early on. We spoke about the Russian exodus in 1917, the Russian Revolution and Civil War, bring Jews fleeing persecution to Mongolia's capital, let's say, of Urga. Interesting enough. So I think there was a lot of Lithuanian Jews. I think since during World War II, Soviet authorities relocated Lithuanian Jews to Siberia and Mongolia. This would impact the small population at that point in time. And really, there was a lot of, let's just say, connection with those places. I think this Jewish story in Mongolia is primarily one of Russian Jews seeking new lives, obviously, unfortunately, facing tragedy. And there wasn't much deep-rooted Sephardic history. which more associated, let's say, with Spain, Portugal, and Middle East, and we spoke about on many occasions before, within regards to the Sephardic communities in of itself, and very, very interesting. So there's a lot actually chronicled over on the Chabad website and other websites also, which we have to point out. Also, there's an interesting article on the Jerusalem Post, also, which is also very interesting. So also on the Hidabrut website, the outreach organization, they put like a Mongol, let's just say, entire article in of itself within regards to dating hundreds of years back. So that's something else that we have to point out. So so I think there's no official census within regards to Mongolia at present, according to the World Jewish Congress. And obviously there's very little Jewish community life over there. And I think the community is also affiliated with Euro-Asia Jewish Congress on a regional level. We spoke about how Rabbi Aaron Wagner has provided support to the Mongolian Jewish community within regards to daily life in of itself. I think Israel and Mongolia have established full diplomatic relations, having established them in 1991, 34 years ago, when time recording. I think the Israeli honorary consul in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, Solongo Line Company, Building Peace, Avenue Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, has a connection, I believe, also. And that's very interesting. So there's actually an interesting story within regards to, on the Jerusalem Post, with regards to the history of Mongolia. It says over here, we read this over actually, over here, it gives a bit more insight to, let's say, the tragedy that the country had felt on various occasions. Also, I think it's important we'll read this article over in the Jerusalem Post, which was posted quite recently on July the 30th, 2024. It says Jewish history of the past 2 millennia is rife with episodes of trauma and tragedy. Nearly every century, it seems, has seen Jews in various parts of the world unfortunately expelled, massacred, forcibly converted, or oppressed. The litany of horrors is so long, the suffering so unimaginable, that it is perhaps inevitable that the collective memory of a person would fail to contain it all. And yet we truly believe that every person is akin to a world unto itself. Then we owe it to those who unfortunately were murdered because they were Jews to salvage as much as we can about what befell them. On one such tragedy, largely forgotten instance, they say, which the author over here in the Jerusalem Post article, I believe the author's name, I'm not so sure who the author actually is over here, maybe Michael Freund, I think is his name. So he says was a pogrom against the Jewish people that was carried out just over a century ago. This was at the time of writing this or in Mongolia. There was a wedge between Russia and China in a far off and inhospitable region. Mongolia does not have much Jewish past to speak about, he says. The first Jews who settled in Mongolia were merchants from Siberia who moved there in the 19th century. In 1917, the Russian Civil War erupted after the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II and the collapse of the provisional government that replaced him. A few hundred Jews fled Russia and settled in Mongolia's capital of Urga, obviously now called Ulaanbaatar. I think, sadly, there was bloodshed, I think, in Russia, where I think the Bolsheviks and their white Russian foes waged a brutal struggle for power, caught up with them shortly afterwards. I think the main culprit in this specific case was an eccentric and rather bizarre figure, someone named Baron Nicoli Robert Maximilian Freiherr von Ungern-Sternberg, who's, let's say, just earned, let's say, nicknamed the Mad Baron. He was actually born in Austria. He was brought up in Estonia and fought in the Cossack army in World War I. At some point, he became a Buddhist, but that didn't dampen, let's say, his lust for all these bad things, let's just say. In the History of the Modern World, writes author, someone named James Palmer, in The Bloody White Baron, a chilling biography on Ungarn, there have been few characters more sadistic, sinister, and deeply demented. That's what he says over. Indeed, one of his, let's say, unfortunately, he really did hate Jews, but was one of his things. He was an anti-Semite, without doubt. He states over, insists that Jews had created communism 3,000 years ago in Babylonia. That's what he claimed. And during the Russian Civil War, Ungarn formed the White Russians' Asiatic Cavalry Division and ruled parts of Siberia and he was like a warlord, let's just say a wild Iowa, stealing supplies from trains and imposing his will with an iron fist. And during the recruitment, I think, he oversaw all men with physical defects were shot. You can see how disgraceful this was, until only the able-bodied remained. Unfortunately, he massacred Jews, regardless of age, sex, or ability. And I think that's what Christopher Othen, an author, a journalist, will actually chronicle over. I think it was in October 1920, Ungarn crossed the border into Mongolia and launched a series of attempts to capture Ulga, which was home to 70,000 people, occupied at the time by the Chinese, but he was repeatedly beaten back. At that point in time, I think it was in January 1921, when his troops attacked Ulga again, breaking through its defenses and capturing the city on February the 4th. Seeing that victory was at hand, Ungarn gave his men 3 days to do so much bad, unfortunately, which they, I think, whatever really did, he says over in this article. And I think in his orders to his men, Ungarn was unequivocal. He issued instructions that would have made, let's say, he was that bad. He was similar to Haman, you could say, the wicked man in the Purim story. And yet Jews were hunted on horseback, reported over through the streets of Ulga, unfortunately lynched in their homes, and were tortured really in the worst ways possible. A Russian, I think, who arrived in Ulga a few days later, described finding dozens of people, unfortunately, really, really mutilated, let's just say, slaughtered, children alike, and old men. This is what's reported over here in the article. And they don't know how many, the exact number of Jews that was murdered in Ulga. And I think Dmitry Pershing, he was a white Russian novelist and historian, said that at least 50 had been killed at that point in time. But I don't know if we've got an exact statistic in itself. And various different stories have been given. Mongolians, I think, had no history nor knowledge of anti-Semitism, I think, initially. And they are said to have been confounded by all the bloodshed, failing to understand why the Jews were being targeted by the Russians. Seemingly, the Mongolian prince, someone named Tokh, even sought to give refuge to several Jews in his compound. I think there's different accounts what happened afterwards, but in the end, the Jewish people he harbored were taken out and unfortunately killed. That's what's reported over here. It's quite an in-depth article within regards to this, and I recommend everyone to actually read this. I think pogrom effectively would destroy Mongolia's, let's say, nascent Jewish community. And then there was Russian Red Army invaded Mongolia, I think, several months afterwards, and it was captured in August 20th, 1921. And the Ungarn captured it on September 15th. I think there was, the prosecutor was a Jew named Yemelin Yarosolsky, and Ungarn was found guilty, but I think he remained unrepentant, even defiant until his end, sadly. After being sentenced to death, Ungarn was asked if he had any last words, to which he responded, "I have nothing to say." And that specific night he was executed, so you could see he had no remorse of the disgraceful things he did. Beyond some additional details, the article said to be contained in archival records, not much else is known about the Jewish people who died during that awful period, or what became of those who somewhat managed to survive. I think more research, the article here on Jerusalem Post will say, has to be conducted within regards to this. And I think the writer has reported over, has, let's say, deputy communications, was a deputy communications director under the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at one stage in time. Friends, anyone tuning in live at the moment, we are exploring the history of the Mongolian Jewish community over here. I think it's first time, there's very few articles here on the channel within regards to this, so I'd recommend everyone to, how important it is actually to learn about it, to educate ourselves about it, and to learn more within regards to the Mongolian Jewish community. It's about the 40th plus country that we've spoken about already inside this series. I can't stress this enough, as we are trying to explore all the various countries in the world and really get just an insight of what actually went on different windows of time here. So anyone that's tuning in live, welcome to our community over here, and we are trying to really educate ourselves within regards to that. Mongolia, not many people have heard about this episode that actually took place at that window of time, so I recommend everyone to learn more about that and research more within regards to this, how important it is that we actually educate the next generation, and they are totally aware of what actually happens in all these countries. I think there is more articles on the internet within regards to it, within regards to there's so much to talk about. There's it's something that we definitely have to point over here. The Jewish Virtual Library also does speak about the country in of itself and the Jewish, let's say, history over here. Once again, speaking really about this episode that actually took place among the Russians in the early 1920s, in the great depth in of itself. So it does point about it. They do also add here on the, I think that hundreds of Israeli tourists visit Mongolia each summer, and the majority of permanent Jewish residents in the country are Israeli businessmen and other foreign, let's say, workers. I think one such businessman mentioned before is Yair Jacob Porat in 1996. And we mentioned about that beforehand, and we spoke about Robert Aaron Wagner already. A close connection with the community. I think in July 2017, the Israeli population and Immigration Authority reported, I think, a strange uptick in the number of Mongolians applying, let's say, for the asylum in Israel. And between January and July 2017, 190 Mongolian tourists visited Israel. Of those, 50 applied for asylum, claiming that they were fleeing personal persecution as members of political opposition party in Mongolia. So I think there's different sources over here. I think one of the main sources for that information was the Federation of Jewish Communities in the CIS also. So we have to point that out also. I think Rabbi Menachem Posner will talk about 100 years after genocide, Mongolia's Jewish community is tiny. An article that was written in January 2025. So that's something else that we have to point out over here, friends. But yeah, not much information we can add on that. There's a lot more to say in general, but I think we've got the logistics over here. Now, friends, everyone tuning in live, we're a community here. We love learning about great countries of yesteryear, famous places of yesteryear, and so on and so forth. So I'm asking you all nicely now, please subscribe to the channel and join our community and enjoy the content, because we've got some fantastic content over there. We do tours all over Israel. We explore various different parts. We explore the archaeology of Israel. The great rabbis of yesteryear. A lot of great topics that we speak about on, and how important actually is to, just the progress that we're making, and so on and so forth. We happen to be recording this, actually, interestingly enough, at the time period of the festival of Hanukkah. Today we happen to be on a day called Zot Hanukkah. What is Zot Hanukkah? It's seen as a very auspicious day in the Jewish calendar, where it's the last day of Hanukkah. We've talked about the machloket before of the famous Beit Tehillah and Beit Shammai with regards to lighting candles. And that's something very interesting, how we ascend. Some people say we descend every single day. It depends on the machloket, which place we are looking at, which specific angle. So that's very interesting to talk about. How do we approach the topic of, within regards to Hanukkah itself, which angle do we look at it as within regards to that? So that's, and do we ascend every single day with the lights or not? But one thing we need to definitely do, which I have to point out, is spread lights all over the world. And Zot Hanukkah is a culmination, or on an 8th day, and I was saying before in one of the videos we were recording that Zot Hanukkah supersedes everything. It's like extra, because 7 days is natural. There's 7 days to the week. And number 8 is supersede. Like Brit Milah is done on the 8th day, for example. So too, Zot Hanukkah, the 8th day of Hanukkah, also very much assembles this and resembles this, and imprints itself on this in of itself. So that's very, very interesting. So I would strongly recommend everyone to make the most of these last moments of Hanukkah, this beautiful Jewish festival. And if you want to watch back again, we did record a video on the Jewish festival of Hanukkah not long ago, just about 2 weeks ago nearly, just before the festival started, a couple of days beforehand. Very great insights we put in. Yes, there happens to be Chag HaBanot, which we've spoken about before on various occasions. And we did a special video last night within regards to that. And already we've done more than 40 countries we've covered from across the world. We want to explore the Jewish history of more countries in due course. and educate ourselves more within regards to them and learn more and really be a shining light of wealth and let's just say education in of itself. So I think on that note, wishing you all well. Thanks for watching. I'm wishing you a happy Hanukkah and a Hanukkah Sameach and learn more about Jewish history. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate it.